Welcome. Today we're unpacking two major policy shifts from the U.S. Department of State that went into effect in early September 2025. If you're an international student, a professional working in the U.S. on a visa, or someone planning to visit family, these changes are going to affect you directly. There are two headline developments. First, starting September 2nd, 2025, the United States dramatically rolled back eligibility for the interview waiver program, commonly called Dropbox. This used to be a convenient option that allowed many people renewing their visas to skip the in-person interview. That convenience is now gone for most applicants. Second, just 4 days later, on September 6, 2025, the US ended the practice of third-country visa stamping. In the past, if your home country consulates had long backlogs, you could schedule your visa interview in another country, maybe Canada, Mexico, or Singapore, to save time. That flexibility no longer exists. Now, taken together, these two changes represent a fundamental reset of how non-immigrant visas are processed. But they're not just two simple shifts. Each of these policy packages contains several underlying rule changes that combine to create a much more complex and challenging system for applicants. In today's episode, we'll walk you through all of these changes one by one, explain how they affect the visa process, and share practical steps to help you plan ahead and avoid unpleasant surprises. Let's start with the rollback of the interview waiver program. Before this change, a wide range of visa applicants could renew their visas without going through an in-person interview at the U.S. consulate. If you met the criteria, you simply submitted your passport and documents, and your visa could be approved without ever stepping inside a consular office. That's no longer the case. Beginning September 2nd, 2025, the US dramatically restricted Dropbox eligibility. Almost all employment-based visas like H-1B, L-1, O-1, and E-2 now require full in-person interviews. Student and exchange visitor visas like F1, M1, and J1 are also affected. In fact, only a very narrow set of applicants remain eligible for interview waivers, such as certain diplomatic and official visa holders, or very specific B1/B2 tourist and business visa renewals, and even those have strict conditions. One of the subtler but equally impactful changes is the elimination of age-based exemptions. Previously, children under 14 and seniors over 79 were often allowed to bypass interviews. That's gone. Now, unless you fall under a diplomatic or humanitarian exemption, everyone needs to appear in person, including minors traveling with their parents. For families, this makes scheduling more complicated and creates additional demand for appointment slots. Another significant shift lies in consular discretion. Even if you technically meet the criteria for a Dropbox renewal, consular officers now have far greater authority to require you to appear in person anyway. That creates a layer of unpredictability. Applicants who thought they could bypass an interview may suddenly find themselves needing to book one, often on short notice. Finally, there are limited exceptions for certain humanitarian or government-related travel, but they're tightly controlled and apply to a very small percentage of cases. For most people listening, the safest assumption is this: plan for an in-person interview every time you apply or renew, no matter what category you fall under. The impact of these changes is straightforward but significant. More people needing interviews means longer queues at US consulates worldwide. Where interview wait times were already long, places like India, China, Brazil, and Mexico, you can expect them to get much worse. If you're renewing your visa or planning new travel, the timeline you thought you could rely on has likely doubled or even tripled. Now let's talk about the other big change, which came just a few days later on September 6, 2025, ending third-country visa stamping. For years, one of the most effective workarounds for applicants facing huge backlogs at home country consulates was third-country visa stamping. Here's how it used to work. Imagine you're an H-1B visa holder living in the US, but originally from India. If the wait time for a US consulate appointment in India was, say, 300 days, you could try to book an appointment in Canada or Mexico, where wait times were much shorter. Thousands of applicants use this strategy every year. So, here's the thing. That flexibility we once had is now gone. Under the new policy, all applicants must schedule their visa interviews in their country of citizenship or legal residence. Now, if your home country doesn't have US visa operations, like, say, Afghanistan, Iran, or Cuba, you're assigned a designated fallback consulate. Afghans, for instance, are directed to Islamabad. Iranians go to Dubai, Venezuelans to Bogota. But for everyone else, you're locked into your home country's consular system. This has major consequences for applicants in high-demand regions, you know. Countries like India, China, Brazil, and Nigeria were already struggling with severe backlogs. By forcing everyone to go through home country consulates, the State Department is concentrating demand in fewer locations, which inevitably drives wait times even higher. The change also carries financial risks, and that's something to really think about. If you accidentally book an appointment in a third country, the application fees you pay are non-refundable and non-transferable. That means if you make a mistake, you lose your money and your place in line. So, the bottom line here is clear. For anyone applying after September 6, 2025, you need to confirm where you're allowed to book your appointment before you pay any fees. Individually, each policy package is significant, but together they create a cascading effect that applicants need to understand. First, the rollback of Dropbox means far more people need in-person interviews. Then, the end of third country stamping means all of those people are now funneled into their home country consulates, with no way to bypass local backlogs. The combined effect is a global surge in demand concentrated into fewer appointment slots, especially in countries where visa demand is already extremely high. For many applicants, this creates a double squeeze. Students hoping to begin programs in the US may miss their semester start dates if they can't secure interviews in time. H-1B and L-1 workers may find themselves stuck abroad while they wait for appointments. Families traveling together will have to coordinate multiple interviews instead of relying on simple renewals for dependents. And for people from countries without US consulates, the designated fallback posts like Dubai or Warsaw will face overwhelming volumes of requests. The system is now less flexible, less predictable, and far less forgiving of planning mistakes. Given these changes, the most important thing you can do as an applicant is start early. The old timeline where you could handle a visa renewal a few weeks before travel is no longer realistic. For most people, you should now be planning 6 to 9 months in advance. Second, confirm where you're allowed to book your appointment before you pay any fees. That's especially critical if you're from a country without local visa services, because your designated fallback post might have its own long queues and special procedures. Third, assume that you'll need to attend an in-person interview, even if you think you might qualify for a waiver. Have your documents prepared, anticipate delays, and, avoid making non-refundable travel arrangements until your visa is secured. And finally, stay updated. The State Department continues to issue guidance on how these policies will work in practice, and procedures may evolve as consulates adjust to new demand. Keeping an eye on official announcements, and if necessary, consulting an immigration attorney, can really save you from costly missteps. These changes are part of a broader tightening of US visa processes, and they represent a shift toward more direct, centralized control over where and how visas are issued. For applicants, That means less flexibility, longer wait times, and more personal responsibility for planning ahead. Understanding these changes and adapting to them is the key to avoiding delays and disruptions.